Now let's see how we can render this using Solaris and Karma. I'm going to switch to Solaris. Let me just expand this. And now I tend to prefer to use things this way. And then here I'm going to split left, right, split left, right. This is going to come in handy while we're accessing the stage and also the object context. This is going to be locked to 1. This is 1, and this is 1 as well. And this is going to be locked to 2 and 2. So here we have our empty stage, and here we'll have our object space where we have our everything that we've done so far. Now, the first thing we need to do is bring in the artifact that we've done already. So I'm going to use a SOP import, and I'm going to look for the RNDR artifact that we have here. It has an object merge and a material. This object merge is pointing here, and this is what I'm going to bring in. And we have it here. Okay, you can see we have the artifact. If you scrub through the timeline, it'll have the same motion, exactly what we had on object space. Now, the difference being that the structure that's being created here on the scene graph is based on the operator name, which is SOP import. But if you dive inside, you already have a bunch of pieces named. And this is precisely based on the name of the primitives, on the name attribute of the primitives. And I'm not really interested in that name, so I'm going to apply a structure specific for this. And one way we can do that is we can actually go here and set a primitive attribute called path that's going to be stronger than the name attribute. So if I come here and I create a primitive wrangle, I'll create set path. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, this is the frames side. And the path that I want to do is pretty much going to translate the structure that I want to create for the object, which is going to be, so it's a string attribute called path, and it's going to be equal to the structure that I want. In this case, it's going to be the artifact, it's going to be the main folder for this asset, the artifact, and this is going to be inside the geometry. And we'll call this frames. Close quotes and semicolon, and that's done. Now, if you look into if we select our SOP import, we'll see we now have a structure that's exactly that. So it's artifact, geometry, and we'll have frames. So we just copy this to the other side. This doesn't affect our Redshift setup at all. It's just a matter of preparing this to have the proper structure that we want inside the stage context and inside Solaris. So we're only going to change this to plates. Okay, so now with our SOP import like this, the import path prefix is not doing anything because we already have a path attribute on the geometry, and it's actually overriding that. So this doesn't really matter, okay? But it'll be easier for us to select and apply the shaders based on this. So I'm gonna still call this get artifact, and we'll move on to create the materials. So let's go to material library, create a material library. The material library is also going to be nested inside the artifact. And inside the material library, we can go and create a principal shader. Here we can also check the shaders that were being used. So on this side, I'm going to go inside the RNDR artifact on the material node, and we have the two shaders here. Let's go to them. We have the plates and the frames. The frames are easier, so I'm going to start with that. Artifact, frames. So it's a pretty basic material with this color. So copy parameter, can apply the color here. Base values. We don't want to use point color. We do want to keep reflection. We have reflection here, and we do have a roughness of 0.3. I think it's fine. The index of refraction, I'm actually going to increase it so we have a bit more reflection, and I'm going to make kind of a fake metallic, kind of strange material, but I'm going to put the metallic up to 0.5. I think it's going to be, or 0.4, maybe not that much. So this is just a starting point. We can always come back and adjust. We already have the material library. Let's create another material. I'll create a material builder for this one. And I'll call this artifact plates. Now that we have the plates, let's go inside. Same thing, so I'm going to remove all of this. Just create a principal shader. We can connect the surface output directly to the shader run. And the principal shader is pretty much, I think it's a pretty straightforward one. So artifact plates, we do have a Fresnel. So let's create a fall off, edge fall off. And the edge fall off, it's going to be connected to the color, the base color. The edge fall off is going to be 2, and the facing color is going to be this one. Copy parameter, paste values. Let me just make sure it's not 100% saturated. So 0.95 is good. And also the color is a bit bright, but yeah, let's leave it like that for now. This principal shader will also be more like glass. So still going to increase the IOR to 1.6. It'll give us a bit more reflection. On the roughness for the specular and reflection, I'm going to keep it at 0.05. And going into the transparency, I do want to have a good amount of transparency, so 0.6, and a dispersion of 0.1. So I think that's it. I think that's all we need. And we have our artifact plates. Going up, I'm going to assign the shaders. You can assign the shaders on the material library. I do tend to prefer to keep these separate, but it's a matter of preference. So the assigned material, I'm going to select the shaders, the geometry. So we have here the frames and the plates. So let's start with the frames. And we also have the materials here, so frames. Let's add another input and let's select the plates and apply the plates to the plates. Okay, so we have our starting point where we have our asset imported. I'm going to bring in the camera. You can just type import, and you have several scene imports, and we can just grab all the cameras that we have and merge this into our structure. Remember, you'll get exactly the same thing if you do it like this, or if you actually merge it. It'll give you the same result. It's just a matter of preference in terms of organization. Merge cameras. Now that we have our cameras, you should be able to go to your viewport and select Cam 1. There we have it. We don't have any lights. That's not problematic. Let's take care of the lights. That's pretty easy to do. We'll add another merge right away. And I'm going to create a dome light or an environment light. I'm going to call this LGT dome. You can go into the light section, and the map that I'm going to be using is going to be, I already have it copied. It's the same that we're using here. So let's go up to object level. If you go to the dome, I have the path here. So it's an HDRI from Polygon. I'm going to copy this, Control A, Control C, Control V on this side. You can make it visible on the viewport if you want. I disabled that option, I guess. So here on the background, display environment lights as background, and it will appear, but I'm not interested in that. So I'm going to keep it like this, and we should be able to start rendering this with Karma. There we have it. So this light dome, I'm going to increase the intensity a bit to 2. And I also want to make sure that I lower the specular multiplier. I want it to be kind of stronger overall, but not that strong in terms of reflections and all that. So I'll bring this down to 0.2. Mostly I wanted to fill in the darkness on the shot. I'm going to go all the way up to 4. And I think this gives us a bit less of a dark feel. So we have our main asset, camera, and our first light, and we'll move on to the next lesson.